guys, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and let's get right into this video. So today we have here Sister Spice.
Hi guys.
So this is part 2 from our last video. If you haven't checked it out, we did these amazing spring nails. You should definitely go watch that vid. We tell some creepy Reddit stories. And for this video, we're going to be working on this hand. So here is the nail set we're going to be recreating. It's a blingy French tip. And the shape of these nails are a little bit different than what we always do, because we always do square nails. But these are going to be, I think they're called crescent shape, because like the tip of the nail is like curved inward like a U shape, like a crescent. So we're gonna try that today. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully it turns out good. So for these nails, we're not really gonna need that much. Just going to use this Nude Polygel from Makartt. And also this liner gel. It's this really pretty color because it's going to be like the background for the gems. And of course we're going to need some gems, a lot of gems. Have these round ones and then like the bigger shaped gems. So that's pretty much all we're going to need. Let's just get right into this nail set. My sanity level is at a good 1.
Oh my gosh, excuse my client there. She just does not know how to contain herself. I don't know if she just thought she could sneak that in there or what was she thinking, but I apologize for her behavior.
Which means I'm fine right now. Not going too crazy as of right now, but maybe that'll change. Who knows, depending on my client here.
My sanity level is a 1, but I'm gonna wait until we get up to a 5 to eat this thing. It's a caramel.
Why do you have a sanity level, huh?
A caramel
You just get to
bonbon.
sit here.
You know, it's tough being on the other side of this.
It's tough, huh? Really? It's really tough over there.
I get scared.
You're scared. No. Look at these lint-free nail wipes. They're pink. Aren't they so cute? So here are Sister Spice's nails. We're gonna start on the nail prep. I'm gonna start off by pushing back the cuticles. Now I'm going to take this circular cuticle drill bit and work this around the cuticle areas. Now I'm going to take my cuticle scissors and trim off all this excess dead skin. Now I'm going to take a fine grit sanding band and I'm going to file over the surface of the nails. Now we're gonna size out the nail tips. Okay, I'm gonna get gluing the tips on with some nail glue. Okay, now we're gonna trim the nail tips down. So we trimmed them down. Now I'm going to shape them. Also, these nails are going to be like that crescent shape here, but I'm pretty sure you're supposed to do that after you have the polygel on. So we're gonna wait to make that shape. For now, we're just gonna shape the nails like regular. Now I'm going to take my fine grit sanding band and remove the shine from all the nail tips. Okay, now we're gonna add on some Dehydrator. And then we're gonna add on a layer of primer. now we're gonna add on a layer of base coat. So Spice wants this silver glitter to be at the bottom of the nails. So like when you flip the nails upside down, you could see the glitter under there. So we're gonna try that, but the only thing is the Nude Polygel that I wanna use is a little bit see-through. So I'm afraid that it might poke through the glitter. So we're gonna try and fix it, but I'll just show you how we're thinking to cover that up. So we're gonna paint the whole tip of this nail, this glitter. Whoa, this glitter is so nice. Whoa. Oh yeah.
Why?
Do you see that?
I see that.
Alright, so here's how the nail looks. Before we do the rest, because I don't actually know if this is going to look okay from the top, we're going to start on the polygel and put a layer of polygel on here. Hopefully it looks okay, and yeah, I'm nervous. Okay, so here's the tip of the nail done. Ignore the tip of the nail. I know it's like a little bit discolored, but it's okay because it's gonna get covered in bling. So this is just the first bead. We're gonna go ahead and cure this. Now we're gonna add another bead onto this nail. So here's how the nail looks. I think it's pretty good. Like, it covers up everything. You can't really see through it, so that's good. Here's how the underside looks. Very cool and glittery. Okay, so we're done with the practice tester nail. Now we're gonna actually do the nails. And Sister Spice is gonna start reading the creepy Reddit stories. Guys, we heard distant meowing from my cat, and we just thought she was all the way across my apartment in my bedroom, but no.
It was because of this chocolate bonbon I had to get.
The chocolate she mentioned.
From the pantry.
Sister Spice got some chocolate from my pantry, and my cat went inside the pantry. Sister Spice closed the pantry door, and my cat's been trapped in there ever since. She's been in there for like an hour and a half. That's a creepy Reddit story for you.
This is the culprit that got stuck in the pantry. Look at her feet.
Do a whole rollover of that ball.
Oh, well, yeah, she was stuck in there. But I think she's all right. You okay? You're not too traumatized, right?
All right, so I'm just gonna do everything I did on this nail on the rest of the nails. And Sister Spice is gonna get into the stories.
Hey guys, I'm back with more Reddit stories. So I'm gonna start off with an Am I the A-hole story. This one's titled, Am I the A-hole for leaving my sister in another country? That is an intense title there. How could you leave your sister in a whole nother country? Me, 28, and my sister, who's 33, planned a trip to the US to Portugal. I booked an Airbnb and hotel. My sister asked if she could pay later. I was fine with this, but a week before the trip is when the problem starts to occur. She still hadn't paid me. She owed me about $1,000. I mentioned it a few times and she sends me half. She said she'll give me the other half cash as she is a bartender. Well, we go on the trip and suddenly she claims she forgot all of her cards and essentially has no money, leaving me to pay for both of us to do anything. I don't want to ruin my trip, so I agree, and I believe she eventually will pay me back. Now, she's my older sister and I'm the youngest. I'm sort of used to my siblings bossing me around, but this trip she was being absolutely terrible to me. There's a fine line between between bossing your sister around and
just being rude.
I've literally never felt so put down in my life. If we got lost, it was my fault. She was constantly yelling at me. She said she doesn't pump gas, so I had to pump the gas every time. One of the places we rented only had one bed, and I had to sleep on the couch.
Whoa.
It was honestly the worst trip I've ever been on. I put up with it as I thought arguing would only make it worse. Well, fast forward to the day we're supposed to leave and travel to Amsterdam. She hasn't packed, so I try to wake her up early so she'll have time and we can make it to the airport. She just goes crazy on me, saying she knows when she needs to wake up and leave her the F alone and then go back to sleep. Well, I decided that that's it, and I get an Uber and leave. I also turn off my phone. Well, not only does she miss the flight, but she has no money to leave. She ends up having to call my parents and they have to help her. Well, now my whole family is saying how I'm horrible and how I left her in such a dangerous situation. I thought I was finally standing up for myself now, but everyone is upset with me and my sister won't speak to me. It's really eating me up inside, so I want outside opinions. Am I the a-hole?
This is an interesting one.
I don't think it was right for her to just straight up
Leave her like that?
I mean, no. She could have left her like that, but at the same time, maybe leave her phone on to contact her or at least get in contact with her.
I feel like, she did it because of how horribly the sister was treating her, but I feel like that's a little extreme. That is kind of dangerous to just leave your sister with no money, no nothing.
Maybe I would have went on the rest of the trip by myself, but told her, you can go back home. We're done. You can go home. Since you don't have any money to pay for yourself, you might as well just go back home. Some commenters said, you're not the a-hole. Your sister's the real one here, the real a-hole. You cannot trust her again. What are your guys' thoughts? Would you leave your sibling behind, or would you tell them, pack it up and we're going home? This trip is ending early. All right, so this is the next story. It is a 4-parter, which I'm excited for. And the title is, I thought my neighborhood was a great place to grow up until this past June. And it's from the subreddit No Sleep. I, a 16-year-old boy, have lived in my house my whole life. I never really realized we were a wealthy neighborhood, just most of my friends' houses had pools and lots of kids got cars when they turned 16. The neighborhoods had block parties, we go to church together, very small town America stuff. Still, they all seemed nice. It seemed like the perfect place to grow up, even for an awkward kid like me, until this past June. I had finished my exam, so summer break for me, but my sister Emma was still mad that she had 2 more weeks of school, and she's only 12. And I woke up to her slamming the door. Kind of a brat thing to do, but I'd be mad too if I was her. I lazed around for a while after that, checking my phone, then grabbed breakfast. My parents were at work, but there was a note from my mom to look for a package delivery today at about 10 a.m. I popped onto Facebook. I'd been checking Marketplace for new headphones. A post on my newsfeed caught my eye from our neighborhood group. Lindsay Marshall, whose daughter went to school with Emma, post a blurry pic of a silver Audi and the word warning underneath. She went about saying how this guy had been driving and then that car had been parked out front of the school. I guess she confronted him because he didn't have any kids with him, and he said something vague and drove off. There were a ton of comments below urging her to go to the police. I rolled my eyes and closed the window. People around here are so paranoid. I played video games until about lunchtime, when I suddenly remembered I forgot to actually check for headphones. So I went back to Facebook and opened it up. This time, the first thing I saw was a post from the local sheriff's department about the silver Audi. It looked like Lindsay had actually called the cops after all. I clicked back to her original post and saw the thread had grown by hundreds of comments. It seemed like everyone in town was talking about this dude and his silver Audi. Then people started posting about another guy in a white van driving around our neighborhood as well. And someone posted about human trafficking. The grown-ups all seemed really scared and concerned. I thought about calling my mom. I heard a car door slam and look out my window. My room looked out over our quiet cul-de-sac, and I saw a white van idling in my driveway. You know, I'd be a little bit scared.
I'd be nervous.
Because I just read about that.
Yeah, and
then now
a
it's
white
in my
van
driveway.
in my driveway.
My heart started beating fast and my mouth went dry as I tried to remember if I locked the door after Emma left this morning. I was halfway down the stairs and I heard another engine roar and screech to a stop. Voices started outside. They were angry, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. One of them sounded familiar. I peeked out my front window and saw our next-door neighbor, Mr. Baird. He had parked right behind the van and was up in the driver's face. The driver was young, and he looked kind of scared. I realized the two other men that I knew from the neighborhood were with Mr. Bard too. I had been scared because Mr. B is huge. He owns his own construction company and looks like he could snap you in two just by thinking about it. I don't know what the guy said to Mr. B, but he shoved the guy to the ground hard. Whoa. By that time, I had run to my front door and opened it. They had the guy flipped over and his hands zip-tied behind him. All four men stopped and stared at me as I opened the front door. The man on the ground tried to yell something, but Mr. B shoved his face into the pavement. "Dylan, it's okay, son. You're safe," Mr. B spoke calmly and looked me in the eye, like the man below him didn't even exist. I looked at the man on the ground and the white van behind him. "What's happening, sir?" I hated the quiver in my voice, but I couldn't help it. These guys have been canvassing the neighborhood, son. First a school, now our streets. The police have been dealing with human trafficking in the city for some time. Now it looks like they're trying to come over here. Mr. B, are you sure? My mom was expecting a package today. Maybe that's just what... Dylan, trust me. We know what we're doing, son. Mr. B's voice was harder now. The way grown-ups get when they don't want you to ask anymore. The man started screaming, saying how they were crazy old effers and he was just doing his job. One of the men behind Mr. B came up with a roll of duct tape and put some over the man's mouth. Mr. B stood up, but kept his foot placed on the man's back. "Go on inside now, son. We'll handle it from here." "Do you want me to call the police, sir?" Mr. B's eyes went hard at that. He motioned to the man behind him, and they picked up the man and put him in the back of the white van in the driveway. Mr. B walked up to me and I suddenly felt unsafe all over again as he put his huge hand on my shoulder and bent down to look me straight in the eye. "Son, you'll understand this when you're a man and have a home and a family to protect. The world is a hard place and there's only so much the police are able to do. How would you feel if something bad happened to someone in this neighborhood? Heck, he was here at your house. What if they snatched Emma? How would your mom feel about that?" I started to speak, but he tightened his meaty hands on my shoulder and I stopped. "Go on back inside now, Dylan, and don't go running your mouth off about this either." I turned and started to walk back to the house when he called back to me. "Oh, and Dylan?" "Yes, sir?" "Remember, son, I'm always right next door."
Is that a threat? Is that a threat?
With that, he turned and went back to his truck. One of the other men got into the van and backed it out as he drove away. 2 days later, the sheriff came to our house in the evening. He had questions about a delivery driver that had gone missing in the area.
Okay, yeah, I'm Dylan. If I'm Dylan, I'm spilling all the beans. If I was Dylan, I would have called the police or my mom once I got back inside. Do you know what just happened to me that I just witnessed? Because to Dylan, is that not suspicious? Because it looks suspicious. Whoa. No.
As I sat in our living room between my mom and dad, the sheriff asked me if I had seen anything strange. I heard Mr. B's lawnmower start up outside, and I remember that he and the sheriff were good friends. As I shook my head, my mom assured the sheriff that she hadn't received her delivery that day. As the sheriff left, I saw him walk over to Mr. B's lawn. The two men laughed and chatted for a few minutes, surveying the lush uniform expanse of lawn in front of them. Mr. B was a fanatic about his lawn, stamping out any weeds that dared sprout on his precious turf. He also turned and our eyes met over the perfectly uniform blades of grass, and I got a sour feeling in my stomach. Not because he looked at me suspiciously, I think I could have handled that, but because he looked at me like we were friends. Since then, I just done what I do best, turtle up. People move on from the disappearance of the driver to other things. My parents are always going on about what a great place this is to grow up. I guess it is, if you're not weird like me. Emma seems to be doing just fine. Besides, I didn't know they hurt him or anything. Mr. B has a lot of money. Maybe they just paid him to go away. School started back up again. Fall turned into winter. I like my classes, and I even had a spare first thing in the morning, so I'd get to sleep in. I try not to think about that day in June too much. When I do, the sour feeling in my stomach comes back. Mr. B offered me a job at his construction company next summer, and my parents think I should take it. I know the pay is great, but whenever I think about it, I think about his hand squeezing on my shoulder and the look in the eyes of the man on the ground. Anyway, that isn't why I started writing all of this out. I know things would have eventually felt fine again. They were already starting to, slowly. But then, this morning, something weird happened. Everybody had left for school or work, and I was getting ready and I heard the doorbell ring. When I got to the door, no one was there. I looked down and my stomach got that sour feeling again. Sitting on our front doorstep was a box. It looked half charred and was soaking wet. It smelled gross, but I picked it up and brought it inside anyway. What? For some reason, I didn't want anyone to see it. My stomach has been in knots since. I can't eat and my hands won't stop shaking. I can just barely make out the label on the box, but I can see it was addressed to my mom. I know this is the package that she was waiting for that day in June. Since I'm pretty sure the driver didn't deliver it, who did? Why now, and why do I feel like this is a threat? That was part 1.
That was definitely a threat, and when the neighbor was like, I'm right next door, that was totally a threat, because it's like,
totally
I'm right next door, like, I'm watching you kind of thing, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm right here, I can see what you up to.
Like if you read in between the lines, yeah, but at the same time, it could be like, don't worry, I'm right next door, I can help.
Yeah. There's something sketchy with the neighbor.
Alright, now I'm gonna start with part 2. It's been a few days since the package was delivered, and my stomach still hasn't unknotted itself. I've gotten some weird looks from my mom and dad, but I've been trying to play it cool in front of them. The soggy package is still sitting in my closet. I'm too scared to open it.
My clothes are gonna stink.
Then, a few days ago, in the evening, I heard a car pull up. I peeked out my window and saw Mr. B talking to a man in his front yard. I recognized him as one of the men with Mr. B in June. I ducked as they both turned to look at my house. Oh my god,
Oh my gosh.
Like, so
What's
they're
going
talking.
on?
Are they talking? So they're talking and then they're talking about his house? Or
I
they felt
guess.
someone looking at them?
Either they're like, someone's watching us, or like they're talking about, I think they're talking about the house.
He didn't stay long, and Mr. B went right inside after. The next morning, he called me over, and I was leaving for school. Started asking the same BS questions that grown-ups always do about school. Then he looked me straight in the eye and asked me something that made my stomach jump into my throat. Stu Corbett last night, he came by. He was pretty upset. I guess he got a weird package delivery yesterday. You wouldn't happen to know anything about it, would you, Dylan? I stammered out, No, sir, but I don't think he totally believed me. He let me go, but I felt him watching as I biked away. Tonight after dinner, I went right back to my room. I've always been a bit of a weird kid, but I can tell my mom and dad know something's up. They kept gently asking about school and friends, not that I have any. I felt stuck and stupid. If I just told them what Mr. B and his friends had done when it happened, then none of this would be going on. Then I remembered Mr. B's hand on my shoulder. No, telling them would have created a whole different problem. I was accepted in my neighborhood, but barely. Mr. B was a pillar of the community, a family man. At best, I wouldn't be believed. At worst, it would be dangerous. Better do what I do best, turtle up and wait for it to pass. Would you tell your parents?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I wouldn't care that Mr. B's hamburger hands
Or like the
my
neighborhood
shoulders.
hierarchy, like, I could care less.
Yeah, I know my family wants to protect me. And what are they going to do, burn my house down?
Right.
It took all of one night for the strategy to fall apart completely. The next morning, I was eating breakfast when I heard it. A deep, guttural growl, followed by slow footsteps in the hallway above me. My blood froze and I sat, rooted in my chair. I knew I was alone in the house. The sound stopped and silence stretched on. I felt like it was waiting for me, whatever it was. Against every instinct in my body, I crept over to the staircase and looked up. Nothing waited to pounce above. I made my way up the stairs and clapped my hands over my mouth when I reached the top. Wet, muddy footprints made their way from my room to the top of the stairs, then vanished. I let out a muffled scream as our doorbell rang.
More like a jump scare.
More like a... A small man greeted me when I flung open the front door, glancing nervously behind me. He was older, well-dressed, and had kind eyes. I couldn't place his accent, but his voice sounded polished and almost musical. Hello, young man. My name is Ron Singh. May we speak for a moment? Yeah? How can I help you? I managed to stammer out, closing the door firmly behind me. He flashed me a warm smile and reached out his hand. His hand was warm and dry, and the moment it enclosed mine, I felt all my fear leave. My stomach unknotted. It felt so relieved that I almost started crying, but held it together as he began. As I said, my name is Ron Singh. I am in the employ of a family of a man named Frajat Seth. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Sure, I guess. I don't know anyone by that name, though, I began, half focused on his conversation and half focused on the possible monster lurking in the house behind me. Not to worry, I have a photograph here somewhere. He let go of my hand and began to search his suit. Almost immediately, the anxiety and fear came creeping back. Then it doubled when he handed out the photograph towards me. As I stared at the face of the man, I felt my mouth go dry. I was transported to the day in June, watching a man being flung to the ground in front of me. No, I haven't seen him before, ever. Sorry, Mr. Singh, I stammered out. His eyes remained kind, but he turned penetrating. Are you sure? He asked gently. This young man's family is incredibly worried about him. I stared at him, and everything went to bubble up and over. Over his shoulders, I heard Mr. B's truck start off, and I felt myself withdraw. No, sir, I lied, hating myself, but I hope you can find him. Thank you. Me as well. Also, please call me Rowan. He smiled at me almost sadly and handed me a card, telling me to call him if I thought of anything at all. He turned to walk back to his car. I saw Mr. B staring at him from his truck next door, but Rowan didn't turn his head once to look at Mr. B. Not wanting to go back into my house or face Mr. B, I quickly locked my front door and hopped on my bike and headed for school. I was almost to the school when a big SUV pulled up alongside me and kept pace with my bike. I looked inside and saw Rick Marshall, the third man in Mr. B's posse that day in June. He kept his window up and didn't say anything, just stared me down. I hurried into the school. When I looked back, he was still watching me from the parking lot. What the hell? I'm riding my bike to school, and this random truck is just keeping pace with me as I'm riding my bike right next to me. I'm intimidated. I'm scared.
Yeah.
The day passes with agonizing slowness. Isn't that always at school? Then I came home to a full-on crap sandwich from my mom. I'd forgotten all about the muddy footprints in the hallway. Or maybe I'd expect the monster/ghost footprints to disappear on their own. Whatever the case, I was in the doghouse. I promised my mom that I'd clean it up and take out the garbage, because they were like from his room to the stairs. That could easily just be him in his shoes. Like, if I was the mom, I'd be like, my kid left their dirty shoe prints.
What are you wearing shoes in the house for, you know?
Exactly. You shouldn't even be wearing shoes in the house to start with. I promised my mom that I'd clean up and take out the garbage, whatever I needed to do to get her off my case. I cleaned up and got through dinner. It was dark before I got to the garbage. Mr. B cornered me as I brought the...
Mr. B's always there. Every time he goes out to talk to someone, looking through the windows, Mr. B's always seems to be watching or around.
Does Mr. B not have a day job?
Right.
I promised my mom that I'd clean up and take out the garbage. Mr. B cornered me as I brought the trash down to the sidewalk. He waved to my mom and asked if he could borrow me for a second, steering me towards his open garage door. Explain to me what the heck this is, Dylan. He spat at me, shoving me against the garage wall and gesturing towards his workbench. A soggy, burnt package, just like the one in my room. I don't know, sir, I managed to reply. Is this a joke of yours, boy? Something you and your friends cooked up? He growled at me, and I was reminded of how huge he was. I smelt beer on his breath and felt smaller than usual. No, sir, he was asking about, Rajat, the man from June? I didn't tell him anything, though, I swear. My words kept tripping over the others. Mr. B stared at me like he was staring right through my core. I felt like I was going to pee myself. When he spoke, he was deadly calm. Dylan, I'm going to choose to believe you this time. I think the man that came to you to see you today is in cahoots with the same gang we saw in June. You understand? I didn't, but he was so huge, so I nodded vigorously. Good man. Now listen. If this man contacts you again, I want you to tell me. Is that clear? If anything out of the ordinary happens, you tell me. Understood? Unable to speak, I just nodded. Good. I'm glad we had this talk, son. It's getting dark. Better get inside. He released me, and I tripped over myself getting away from him. I stared at the package in my closet for a very long time before going to bed. I felt Rowan's card in my pocket. It felt like a talisman. Whenever I held it, the knots in my stomach went away. I felt normal. I fell asleep with it cradled to my chest. I woke up the next morning and cautiously poked my head in the hallway, heart pounding. I felt like a little kid looking for monsters, but thankfully the coast was clear. I made breakfast and scrolled through social media while I ate until a headline made me drop my spoon. Local man found dead in pool. Underneath was a picture of Stu Corbett.
Who's that? We don't know him yet?
We do. Mr. B. He went up to Mr. B.
Oh, that was the second guy in his posse.
I think so, yeah.
That when it was in his driveway.
I think so. And like, do you remember he looked out his window and he saw Mr. B talking to someone?
To him. And then they both looked at Dylan's house.
Yeah, and then Mr. B said like Stu Corbett had that soggy package and thought it was a sick joke. What is that? That's the end of part 2.
Maybe everyone who's receiving those packages, something's gonna happen to them. So because this is the last nail we gotta do, we don't want to start the next part yet. So I'm gonna finish up this pinky nail and then we'll come back to these stories after we're done shaping. Okay guys, so all the polygel's on. Here's how the nails look. I did the thumbnail on an Instagram reel and look at, this is basically the shape we're going for. You see how this is like a cutout, like crescent moon shape. So that's what we're gonna be doing on all the nails. I love it. It looks so cute. So we're gonna do that for the rest of the nails. I just have my Makartt dust collector and a hand file and we're gonna get reshaping. Alright, so here's how the nails are looking after they have been shaped. They are so cute. I love this nail shape. So next we're going to start on the nail art and decorations. So I'm going to use this nail liner and I'm going to draw French tips because that's kind of like the base, the outline for the gems. Just in case there's any like spaces between the gems, I want there to be a nice background. So I guess we're gonna start. Luckily this liner is already a brush, so we're just gonna get drawing on these French tips. And Sister Spice is gonna continue the Reddit stories.
All right, we're gonna start on part 3. Just kind of a quick recap. We were left off on like narrator was reading the headline, dead man found in pool, and so kind of picking up from that. Before I left for school that morning, I tossed a smelly burnt package into our garbage. I'm not sure why I didn't do it sooner, but I felt better knowing it was getting picked up with our trash that day. I also resolved to talk to my mom and dad. Even if I sounded crazy, I know they'd help me and wad me through whatever was happening. I almost threw out Rowan's business card too, but something stopped me. For now, it stayed folded in my back pocket. As I biked home after school, I felt better than I did in months. I had a plan. My mom and dad were busy, but good people. I'd tell them what happened and we'd figure this out. My stomach jumped a bit as I turned onto my street and saw Rick Marshall's SUV in Mr. B's driveway. Their garage door was open and I knew they'd seen me as soon as I passed by to my house. I took a deep breath and kept pedaling. I didn't get very far. Mr. B practically sprinted down his driveway when he saw me, and I stopped reluctantly. One look at his flushed face and the way Mr. Marshall was leaning in the garage told me they'd been drinking. "Dylan, I'm glad I caught you, son." He grabbed my shoulder again, but this time in a kind way. "Everything okay, sir?" I asked, working hard to make myself smaller in his grip. "I'm sure you heard about Stu by now," he began and continued talking excitedly over my nod. "Well, as you're aware, I'm very close with the sheriff, with Sheriff Davidson. Now, this is all very hush-hush, son, you hear? He told me that Stu's death isn't being treated as an accidental death. No, sir. They have these muddy footprints they found leading away from the pool." Everything after that faded out. Muddy footprints? I felt goosebumps break out up on my arm as I thought about the footprints leading from my room to the top of the staircase in my house. "You listening, boy?" cut in Mr. Marshall, who staggered down beside Mr. B, and I snapped back to attention. Something was off about both of them, and it wasn't just the beer. Their eyes had this intensity, and Mr. Marshall couldn't seem to sit still. He paced back and forth behind Mr. B. Yes, sir, I'm sorry. I just can't believe someone would hurt Mr. Corbett," I stammered out, letting all the fear I was feeling into my voice. Mr. B shot Mr. Marshall a look and he backed off. "Now listen, son, you're safe," Mr. B declared, squeezing my shoulder again. "You just need to let me know about anything strange that happened around here. Like that man who came by. He gave you anything? Tell you how to get a hold of him?" "No, sir," I lied about the card in my pocket. Mr. B stared at me for a moment and said, "All right, son, give me your number and I'll text so you have a way to get in touch with me in case anything happens." Wanting to get away, I rattled off my number as quickly as I could. Mr. B typed something into his phone and only let me go when we both heard a message ding. He nodded to me and I wheeled my bike back down the road, careful not to step on his grass.
So he had to make sure that that was actually his number. Oh my gosh.
I checked the message as I walked up my driveway. "Remember, son, I'm always next door." I put my bike away and walked up to the front door. My heart began to pound. This isn't real, I told myself, but it was. The package was back, with muddy footprints leading down the front steps away from it. I kicked the package out of the way and ran inside, locking the door behind me. I ran into the kitchen, calling for my dad, but stopped as I glanced at the calendar. My brain did a million forbidden curses as I remembered Mom and Dad were both out of town tonight. Even if I called them to come home right now, they were at least an hour and a half away. My blood froze as a pounding came from the front door. Heart hammering, I slowly walked back down the hallway towards my front door. I jumped as the pounding came again, louder this time. I reached for the door handle and let out a scream as it flew open. My little sister Emma bursted in the front door and shot me a look. "Why'd you lock the door, weirdo? I was right behind you. Didn't you hear me call you?" She chided me as she pushed past into the house. My heart was still pounding in my ears as I sank against the wall. "You scared the poop out of me." I managed to get out. "You could have brought in Mom's package," she replied, and I realized with horror that she held up the charred package in her hand. I wonder what happened to it. It looks like they set it on fire. Super weird. I thought it was a prank or something, I guess. I tried and failed to sound normal. Just leave it in her office so she can find it. Emma narrowed her eyes at me. She shrugged and headed down the hallway. I ran upstairs to my room and looked out my window. I could still see Mr. Marshall's truck and Mr. B's driveway. I wonder if they had seen someone deliver the package. Maybe that's why they were acting so weird. I sank onto my bed and muffled a sob. I just wanted to hide in my room, be done with this all. It seemed like every time I tried to avoid trouble, it just seemed to find me. As I thought about my problems, my hand slipped into my pocket and I realized I was holding Rowan's card again, like a talisman. An idea took hold and I opened up my phone. An hour later, I was shivering in a nearby park with the package in my backpack. Rowan agreed to meet me away from his house. It took $20 and a promise of weeks worth of chores to get Emma to agree not to tell Mom and Dad I went out when I was supposed to be watching her. I made sure she locked up after me and snuck through the backyard to avoid Mr. B and Mr. Marshall out front. For all my precaution, my gut was still rolling as I saw Rowan pull up in his small sedan. He got out and sat next to me on the bench, remarking on what a beautiful day it was. Not willing to make small talk, I pulled the package out of my backpack and sat it on the bench between us. I had thought long and hard about what I was going to say. I had it rehearsed, but when that moment came, it all left my head. All I managed to say woodenly was, "This keeps getting delivered." He paused for a moment. We sat silently on the bench for a moment. When I looked up, he was looking at me with kind, sad eyes. All he said softly was, "Ah, do you think..." I started, then paused for a moment, not knowing the right words. Rohan waited patiently. "Do you think this has something to do with the delivery driver?" I asked timidly. I felt myself fold in when I saw Rowan's eyes turn penetrated again. "It would seem odd considering you knew nothing about Rajat," he responded mildly. I felt my legs start to bounce up and down and grounded into my elbow. I hated how he was silent while I stammered on. I was beginning to regret calling him. I felt my face flush as I stared at the blurry ground in front of me. That familiar voice in my head started up again. "I'm so pathetic. I just need to go. I can't help anyway. I'm useless." A hand touched my shoulder and the voice slipped away. The sob I'd been holding on to burst out of my chest, and I lost it for a moment on the bench while he waited. "Dylan," he began gently, "I'm not sure what you're holding on to. However, I promise you the only way that you'll be able to get rid of the feelings that are plaguing you is to talk about it. Tell me what happened. What happened to Rajat?" I sniffled and nodded, trying to catch my breath. I took a breath and prepared myself to tell him everything. When a ding broke my train of thought. "1 second, sir. This might be my sister," I muttered and pulled out my phone. As I read the message, I felt the blood drain from my face. "Dylan, what's wrong?" Rowan sounded alarmed as I swayed on the bench. I showed him my phone. "Say hi to your friend for us, son. Tell him you're both to meet us at Blackwater Pond within the hour. I hate to make us wait any longer with this pretty little thing." Beneath the text was a picture of Emma, trussed up and looking terrified in the back of Mr. B's truck. And that's the end of part 3, so now we got part 4 to move on to. Alright, this is the last part of the story. Are we ready? Rohan's expression didn't change when he read the message, save for grim lines deepening around his mouth. His dark eyes flashed at the top of the photo of Emma, and in a voice that was eerily calm, he asked, "I'm sure you know the way to Blackwater Pond." I did. It was a random fishing hole a few miles out of town. I remembered Mr. B talking about it. He had a cabin there. Rohan nodded and said, "Okay, let's go." "Should we call the police?" I asked timidly as we got into the car and he typed in the coordinates. "There seems to be an odd connection between the sheriff and some citizens here, does there not?" Though he wasn't looking at me, all I could do was nod and look at my hands. "Dylan," Rohan's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "I had hoped to have more time to talk to you, but time is of the essence. I need you to tell me exactly what transpired in June. I cannot explain right now, but everything in the next hour hinges on your honesty. Tell me everything." I paused for a moment and took a deep breath. Then the dam broke. Words mingled with sobs came rushing out of me. I talked about the post I had seen online, Mr. B pinning Rajat to the ground, the fear in his eyes. I told him about the sheriff and Mr. B, how I thought Mr. B and his friends might have done something bad to Rajat, and I was just too scared to speak up. I talked about how afterwards, each day made it seem harder and harder to justify coming forward. Then I talked about the package, the muddy footprints, and Stu Corbett. Rohan listened quietly, asking a few questions. He was the first grown-up I'd ever really talked to like this. Usually they just pretended to listen so they can tell you what they think, but not him. He listened. When I finally finished and sat quietly in the passenger seat, he glanced at me with a reassuring smile. Feel better? I would, but all I can think about now is Emma. I didn't think I had any tears left, but more crept into my eyes. She'll be fine, he said with confidence. How can you know that? But even as I asked, I believed him. His strange calmness seemed to be stealing over me. He flashed me another smile and said cryptically, I found in situations like these, it helps to have friends in high and low places. I didn't have time to let that sink in because he announced, We're here. Mr. B was waiting for us by the front of his truck with his rifle in hand. When we pulled into his lane, I didn't see Mr. Marshall at first, but then spied him pulling Emma out of the truck. Though I was powerless against him, my hands clenched at my sides, and I saw her bound hands and wild eyes. Rohan placed himself between me and Mr. B and began speaking calmly to him. His sincerity didn't touch Mr. B, though. It only seemed to make him madder. He started to scream crazy stuff at Rohan. As I have said, I'm only trying to locate the whereabouts of Rajat Seth. His family is very worried, Rohan kept saying calmly. It was then I noticed the pond, churning water and bubbles approaching the shore as Mr. B kept screaming at Rohan and Mr. Marshall held tight to Emma. Rohan noticed too, and I saw him subtly shift his stance so he now stood between me and the water. Mr. B seemed to see me for the first time, and he began to scream at me too, calling me a coward and a traitor, telling me I never belonged in our neighborhood.
Okay, so here's the nails so far. Next step, we're gonna be adding on all the bling, all the gems. These nails covered with gems. I'm not really sure if there's not really a way to do this, so I'm just gonna try my best. And yeah, let's get started.
My first instinct was to turtle up, but I could tell Rohan wanted to keep him talking, so I did something I never thought possible of myself. I'm the coward? I yelled loudly. Wow, surprising even myself. I forgot how brave you were in June. What was it again? 3 plus a roll of duct tape on 1? Since silence floated across the lawn for a moment before I saw Mr. B's hand tighten on the gun and I heard Mr. Marshall chuckle. You just signed your death warrant, son.
Oh no!
Mr. B lost his mind at that point, screaming about how he'd kill every invader that set foot in his town. That the mouthy little poop in the van deserved what he got. To be honest, I wasn't focused on any of it. I was focused on the water behind him. A slim, dark figure had erupted from the pond and was limping towards the men facing us, charred and bloated. It was still the unmistakable face that had been seared into my mind since June. Rajat Seth dragged himself forward purposely towards the 2 men in front of him. Mr. Marshall was so intent on the show Mr. B was putting on that he didn't notice until Rajat was almost on top of him. Emma must have been waiting for a change in his grip because as soon as Rajat grabbed a hold of Mr. Marshall, Emma ripped free and began sprinting towards me. Mr. B turned and chucked Emma as she ran past, sending her sprawling headfirst into the front of the truck. She laid still, knocked out cold. I started to run to her, but Rowan stopped me, his eyes still locked on the creature in front of us. He kept muttering something under his breath. My knees buckled as the creature that was Rajat Seth ripped Mr. Marshall's head right off his body.
Whoa.
With no more effort than twisting the top of a soda. Mr. B was screaming again, but this time in terror. Rajat kept coming, and at last Mr. B dove for his truck. He managed to get the door shut, but it was promptly ripped off its hinges. I shut my eyes as blood sprayed inside the truck and Mr. B's screams got cut off abruptly. That was like instant revenge. Mm-hmm. The silence that followed seemed more ominous than the shrieks that had filled the air. Silence but for Mr. Rohan's quiet muttering. I stupidly opened my eyes, expecting the creature to be gone. Maybe expecting to wake up. Instead, it stood before us, with its dull, milky eyes staring right at me. I shrank further behind Rohan, and his chanting intensified. Oh, chanting! The creature began to come towards us. It seemed to be fighting him, chittering and screeching. Finally, Rohan said forcefully, "Enough, Bagdana. He feels guilty for his cowardness. Nothing more. Be gone." The creature paused for a moment, swaying in the wind. Then slowly, its mouth began to gape open. I tasted my lunch as a gray, scrawny hand climbed up from inside Rajat's throat. A skeletal humanoid figure pulled itself out of Rajat's impossibly wide mouth and threw his body on the ground like an ill-fitted coat. It hissed at Rohan and turned towards the pond. It glanced back once or twice at me hungrily, but disappeared into the murky depths as instructed. Rohan let out a breath. I didn't know he was holding and walking briskly to Emma. I stood frozen, not trusting the suspiciously calm water. "Just a knock on the head," called Rohan as he assessed Emma. He picked her up and gently placed her in the back of the sedan. "Come in?" he asked. I blinked my eyes and opened my mouth to speak. Rohan held up a hand. "Questions are for the car. Time to go." We drove for a moment in silence, then Rohan interjects as he began to speak. "I can't tell you everything, Dylan, so I'm going to ask that you consider your questions carefully." What is that thing?" I blurted out immediately. "What you saw first was the murder remains of Rajat Seth. The creature inside was an associate of mine, the Jewish demon Bagdana." "Why did it attack Mr. B and Mr. Marshall? Why did it try to get me? Did it kill Mr. Corbett?" The questions tumbled over my lips, and Rohan closed his eyes and groaned, looking sheepish. "Well, I have a small apology to make. Bagdana was here at my request. Mr. Seth's family was desperate for answers, but whatever means necessary and willing to pay a very dear price. I called upon him to seek out those with guilt in their hearts relating to Mr. Seth's fate. It's very tricky to talk to demons, even one as forgiving as Bagdana. Your guilt also caught you in his trap as well. I hope that you can find it within your heart to forgive me for what you've gone through." He seemed so sincere that I had to duck my head and mutter, "Okay." "Mr. B didn't seem very guilty," I remarked suddenly. "Guilt is guilt, Dylan. No matter how many levels of justification you wrap around something, at the core, it's still the raw guilt. That's what Bagdana is so good at sniffing out." "How did you know to call Bagdana?" I whispered, surveying the roadside, half expecting to see the humanoid creature skithering towards me. Rohan smiled. "I've spent many years studying demons and other entities. As my path in life has shifted, I find it helpful to call upon them occasionally." I studied the road for a moment, unsure how to word the thoughts floating around my head. "You said it was my cowardness that I felt guilty for. Do you think I'm a coward?" I examined a scuff in my shoe as I asked the question, dreading the answer. Silence stretched on in the car as I waited, and I felt my stomach roll over as Rohan pulled the car over to the side of the road. I looked up and was met again with his kind smile. "Dylan, I need you to understand that it doesn't matter what I think. I could tell you 100 times that you did the best you could, and you wouldn't believe me, unless you came to believe it yourself." I nodded and felt my eyes fill with more tears. He continued. "You were faced with something very intense at a young age. If I can offer some advice, it may only be that you are not so quick to discount your feelings in the future. Had you listened to your shame, guilt, or fear earlier, then you may not have ended up in this situation." We sat in silence for another moment. Rohan pulled the car back onto the road, and something else occurred to me. "I have another question." He smiled and waited. "What's in the box?" He chuckled and asked conspiratorially, "Are you sure you want to know?" I nodded eagerly. "Absolutely nothing." "Oh, anything else?" Yeah, what's the price did Rajat's family have to pay?" Rohan sighed. "That I cannot disclose. Just pray you never need to pay it." We drove the rest of the way home in silence. As he turned into my neighborhood, I suddenly had a thought. What about everything back at the lake? The bodies, our prints, maybe on something. What should I say? What should I tell my parents? Rohan said softly, "I can assure you that those details has been taken care of this time. But in the future, Dylan, I implore you, when you see something unjust, say something. It may be more difficult conversation at the moment, but I promise you, every time that it happens, you'll become stronger for it." He was right. Things were taken care of when we got home. I put Emma on the couch. She woke up without a scratch on her, remembering nothing. A few days later, Mr. B and Mr. Marshall's bodies were found by Blackwater Pond. I don't know the details of how they were found, but the police chalked it up to a murder-suicide. I finally got the courage to tell my parents about the day in June, and together we talked to the police. They dragged the pond and found Rajat's body. I didn't feel proud of myself, but I felt better. I wanted to tell Rohan that I did it, but he'd made me give back his card, and his number disappeared from my phone. Since then, I've tried my best to live by his advice. I don't have many friends before, but I found that speaking up for what I thought was right gained me a few. Good people, too. I don't always make the right choices. Who does? But I'm getting better at living in the way that makes myself proud. I have a good motivation, too. Whenever I slip, whenever I want to turtle back up again, I just remember there are people like Rohan, people who can talk to the things that live in the dark places. I remember what lurks beneath the surface at places like Blackwater Pond, and how they treat guilty cowards like Mr. B and his friends. The end.
Get a load of this. Well, that story was very interesting.
I didn't think that Rohan was like a supernatural
type of guy, right?
Yeah.
I thought he was just kind of like a private investigator.
Yeah, it was a good story, and I think the lesson behind it as well, like just speak up for yourself, and yeah, don't let people push you around. What are your guys' thoughts? I thought the little like beast crawling out of the dead corpse was like, what the heck was that? Yeah, but that was the last part of that story. All right, so I'm gonna pick, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for telling my neighbor she needs to stop flaunting her money and spoiling her kids? This happened in August. I have 4 kids and am a single mom who gets $239 each month in child support. My neighbor has 2 daughters with a husband who's a lawyer, and she's a nurse, so her kids are spoiled rotten. I just had to pause there. Like, they work hard, they got good paying jobs, and they work hard. That's all that it sounds like so far.
Right.
When I caught wind of her taking her kids school shopping, I asked if I could have a lift to the local Walmart since I didn't want to waste money with having to take myself and the kids on the bus. And she said sure. Her and 4 kids, that's a family of 5. Like, how big is their car too?
Right.
That she asked for a ride for. We were dropped off at Walmart, and I told my kids they could get one special school item, so my 2 daughters got sparkly mechanical pencil, and my 1 son got a dinosaur notebook, and my other son got colorful gel pens. There was frozen pizza on sale, and since we can't afford to order pizza out and only have frozen pizza on occasion, I said why not, and bought one for dinner. And then I got them some new school clothes. When my neighbor picked us up a few hours later, her back seat and trunk were filled, in all caps, with garbage from Justice, Abercrombie, Staples, etc. And plus they had to-go boxes. Our kids were talking about what they got, and her kids had gotten all high-priced crap from these stores. Her one daughter went, "Mommy, get a steak for dinner at Roadhouse." And my youngest said we had gotten frozen pizza, which broke my heart. Well, I probably spent $75 to $100 tops. My neighbors probably spent hundreds on their kids. On the way home, the daughters were begging for McDonald's sundaes, so the neighbor pulls into the drive-thru and asked me if my kids would like any. I said yeah, assuming she would be paying, but then she ordered separately and asked for the money. I forked the money over that was supposed to be for getting my hair done next week. When we got home, I took neighbor aside and told her that I don't appreciate her rubbing her money in my kids' faces. I try to make their lives easier with the little things here and there, but then she goes ahead and spoils her kids rotten right in front of my kids. She told me she allowed to spend her money the way she sees fit with her children, and I told her that her kids are spoiled and don't need all that high-priced stuff anyways. She hadn't spoken to me since, and I have struggled since I used to rely on favors from her, and it's starting to drive me insane. Am I the a-hole for calling her out on her materialistic ways? Absolutely. Number 1, you asking favors for her. Number 2, they seem like hardworking people. They have job, nurse, and lawyer. Hello, those are pretty stressful jobs. Number 3, you can go get a job yourself if you just rely on the $200 from child support.
And not to mention the hair comment.
Literally, like, you really need your hair done then? You could use that money, you could sacrifice you not getting your hair done if you really want to spoil your kids like her. Like,
she is the one who is asking this other family for favors and being in their presence, in their car. And she has the audacity to be like, don't buy stuff for your kids in front of my kids. What? You're the one literally here because you don't have a car, you don't have a ride.
Yeah, and I graciously let you. Like, Walmart wasn't even one of those family stops out of their way to bring her to Walmart and go to wherever they're going.
Yeah.
A commenter said, "You are the a-hole. You asked for a ride because you wanted to save money, then you complain that your neighbor buys things for her children?
What? That makes no sense, exactly.
You don't get to tell other people how they can spend their money, especially when you're trying to benefit from their money." Another commenter, "You are the a-hole. You used this woman for a ride and had the audacity to confront her over a non-issue? I read this post thinking she was shoving a Maserati down your throat for show, but all she did was generously give you a ride to Walmart and pick you up. That lady is right. She has every right to spend her money as she sees fit. You're coming off as a petulant child. You had to dip into your hair money. Okay, so you made your kids happy, right? Isn't that the point? It's not about the money. It's about the time you spend with your kids. So what? They have more money. They work their butts off for it. Don't bother asking for another ride because it's not going to happen. You're ungrateful. You're just jealous that you can't keep up with the Joneses. Another commenter, she did you a favor and drove you and your kids to the store. Why would you also expect her to buy your food?
Right.
She was stopping to get her family food. Because you and your kiddos were in the car, she asked if you would also like to get food, being polite. No one was rubbing your nose in or anything. They were being polite because you're in the car and their kids wanted food. Like, they're being polite to just offer you. Like, did you want to buy your kids something since we're here? What are your guys' thoughts? This one was just like, what the? This next story is from the subreddit Short Scary Stories. It's titled The Decline. They all thought I was crazy. Now they're all dead. Every person I ever knew, and probably every other person too. I squeezed the tin opener and started turning the crank. The hobs ignite. The beans slowly heated as I stirred. They said nature was on the decline, but they couldn't have been more wrong. I was wrong too. I'm not here because I saw what's coming. I'm here because I was paranoid. I finished the beans and rinsed the tin, placing it in the storage room where all the other empty tins. Some of them I used as drinking containers, some I found other purposes for. It feels redundant, but I'm hoping that by doing so, I can pay back some of the dues as we as a species own. I headed into the next room and began to count the tins, still filled with food. I do this every day. I know the number by heart, yet I still count. If I carry on this way, I should have enough food to last for at least a year. After that, who knows? I'll either head out and hope the nature has decided our debt is paid, or I'll stay here and starve. I still remember the day they first came. I thought I felt a change in political wind. I bought into the conspiracies that a new world order was about to enact by a tyrannical government. Whether that would have been the case, I don't know. I no longer care. I should have listened to the people screaming about the pain we're putting Mother Nature through, the pollution, the constant expansion of industrialization, sucking the life from the planet. They said nature was on the decline, but they couldn't have been more wrong. Nature was giving us one last chance to change our ways, yet we didn't respect her and now it's too late. I remember the first news reporter, earthquakes that tore our cities apart, tsunamis that crumbled the shores, and hurricanes that ripped open our homes. Then they appeared, huge creatures taller than any building, ancient beings that had laid dormant deep within the ocean, waiting for nature to call upon them once again. They were driven by a single goal, to wipe out the disease that was killing the planet. I was lucky to escape. I crossed off the days on my calendar based when I sleep. It says I've been here for the last 6 months. The truth is, I have no real concept of how long I've been here. If it weren't for the food I'd hoarded and solar power light in my rain filtration system, I'd be dead too. I wonder if that had been better off. Am I just prolonging this pain? Is there anyone left? I have no idea, and I'll doubt I'll ever know. If I carry on this way, I should have enough food for at least a year. After that, who knows? If you were in that situation, what would you do?
What would I do? What?
Yeah, if you kind of knew that there was some, like he said, I bought into the conspiracies, would you stock up on food, or would you just kind of be like, and then when it actually happened, now you're kind of
I'm like, oh.
Would you go out and kind of look for food, or?
I'm gearing up. I'm going to Walmart, going to the section, and I'm gearing up.
As simple as that.
Yep.
Am I the a-hole for not liking my birthday gift? So I, 22 male, and my fiance, 22 male, have been living in a rental property for 1 whole year. My birthday is on the 14th. My fiance has been hyping up a gift for me, saying this is the best gift ever, and all this other stuff. I love my fiance, I really do, but giving gifts is not his strong suit. I don't care most of the time. I love him regardless. Anyways, onto my situation. So today, after a stressful day at work, my fiance told me I can see my present. I got off at 10 p.m. at night and was working my server job. It is 40-something degrees out, pitch black. My fiance parks his car and marches me over the side of the house. Oh, and keep in mind, it's 10 p.m. at night, 40 degrees outside. And his fiance says, let's go to the side of the house. What? There is a 10 by 20 foot garden plot smack dab in the middle of our yard. What the heck? Now, just listen to my reasoning before judging. We live on the beach. I'm talking like less than 2 miles from the beach. Our yard is grass over 25%, dirt, and 75% sand. We are renting. We're supposed to be moving hours away sometime later this year, and now there's a big giant hole in our yard that is the grave for our deposit. I forced out some thank yous and I love it. We go inside and my fiance starts talking about growing our own food and living off the land. Oh no, he's seen some of those TikToks. I grew up with my own little farm, so I have basic knowledge on how to grow some veggies. There is not a thing I can think of that is edible that grows in sand. I gently mentioned this to my fiance, and how is this going to be a lot of money? We would have to shell out cash we don't have to even try to get a small garden growing. And we wouldn't even be here to enjoy the fruits of his labor. He's hurt deeply. Oh, because they're moving. And like, you know how things take time to grow. I'm not trying to be the a-hole here, but this seems like a literal money pit. I am down to plant flowers there, but he is still really hurt. Veggies won't grow there. Am I in the wrong? The land, as far as I know, has never been tilled either, so that's just more time and energy gone for something we would only enjoy for a few months. I love him so much and I really appreciate the effort, but honestly, this is a really bad present. Am I being a little too harsh? Also, if you know any flowers that grow well in humid, cloudy, always rainy, cold beach environments, please let me know what they are. ...
He's not the a-hole. You know, sometimes you can want to do something nice and get such a nice gift, but you have to think about it.
Like,
Did the other fiance not think about it?
Yeah, like commenter said, not the a-hole. The fact that you're renting is reason enough to dislike the gift, especially as they are moving in a few months. Like, what grows in a few months? Like ripe enough.
I said, did the fiance not think about it?
I don't think so. Sounds like he had nice intentions with the gift, but he can't be butthurt about the physically impossible veggies not being grown there. Guess you can try and explain that whilst the sentiment was nice, it isn't practical or the best investment, given you guys are moving soon. This is one of those standards. The heart's in the right place, but the mind was visiting distant foreign land. I guess the thought that counts, but at the same time, what's the thought? Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, what were you thinking?
Am I the a-hole for not bailing my son out? My son, Becker, 27.
Instantly no. You're not the a-hole, but you are the a-hole for naming him
that. My son, Becker, 27.
He sounds like he'd cause trouble.
Talked nonstop about his investment of crypto coins called Shiba. He kept trying to get my wife and other family members to invest. His investments failed sometime last year, and he hasn't been paying rent. I helped him out for a bit, but told him to get a job anywhere. But it lasted for maybe a month because he was always overqualified, I say in quotation, for his retail, grocery, and restaurant jobs. Despite dropping out of college and still being settled with that debt, after the new year, I cut off the bank of mom and dad. He's 27. Things seemed okay until last month, until my wife got a random call and Becker is in jail for theft. He stole from his friends and roommates because he was once again unemployed and his investments hadn't worked out. Not only that, Becker confessed his crimes to the police because they acted sympathetic to his story. They tricked me, is what he's saying. My wife paid his bail, and I stopped my direct deposit to our joint account. I'm not paying for Becker's lawyers, and I don't care because my wife has repeatedly failed him for calling him her smart or genius boy. Every time he'd do something stupid, just to cover for him. Her job doesn't pay that much, but she's already going through all of her money to get him a good attorney because of his felony charges that are freaking mile high, and I'm not giving him 1 penny for his defense. Am I the a-hole?
Let the mom do that with her own money if she wants to. But honestly, I don't think the dad is. The son is old enough to get the consequences of his actions.
A lot of commenters disagree with you though. They say he is the a-hole.
Really?
Yeah, you are the a-hole. But for blaming your wife for all your parental shortcomings, a 27-year-old is an adult, not a work in progress. This situation was set in motion a long time ago. The fact that you only just cut off the bank of mom and dad is a big clue. Another commenter said, and since when was a college dropout overqualified for working in restaurants or grocery stores? A lot of people who work in these jobs are college students who are still enrolled in courses, working to pay expenses and tuition. The nerve of him looking down on these jobs. Alright guys, that's gonna be my last story. I hope you enjoyed listening to them in this vid and the other vid. That's gonna be it for me. Sister Spice out.
All right, look at these blinged out gemmy gem nails. These are amazing. I just did the thumb for my Instagram and we're pretty much done. Like, these are the nails. Top coat's already on there, so we're just gonna finish these off with some cuticle oil. Okay guys, and here's how the nails turned out. Let us know what you guys think of this nail set in the comments. Sister Spice, what do you think?
I think these are bling-tastic.
Bling-tastic, exactly. Honestly, I really love these nails. I think they turned out so good. Honestly, better than I expected. I was a little nervous for the shape we were doing, but it turned out to be like really nice. And for the bling, each nail took about 15 minutes to place all the bling on there, but it wasn't too bad. We got through it. Love everything about these nails. They just turned out so good.
I'm blinged out.
Blinged out.
Imagine you see me walking down a grocery aisle, right? My hand, right? And you're like, whoa, what was that glimmer of light?
Glimmer of light.
And you're blinded.
Godly the light. I'm blinded.
You look and you're like, gosh, those nails are stunning, right? Or what are you thinking?
I'm thinking, whoa, look at those nails.
I am too. And then you would be like, wow, your nails are good. And then imagine me waving you with them, like, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, they're literally so blinding. It's incredible.
I do frequently get compliments when I go out, always. It's always like, wow, your nails are gorgeous. Or like, wow, how do you do anything with long nails? I only have short nubby nails, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just like, thank you. Thank you for your acknowledgement.
Whoa. Look at those nails. All the gems and the French tips.
What are salon prices?
Let us know salon prices. How much would this set, if you know, how much would this set cost? Or how much would you pay for this?
Or how much would you charge someone for this?
Or
You're
how much
doing it.
Yeah, how much would you charge for this? These are really incredible. They are so show-stopping.
My show stopped, paused. I'm looking at this show.
And here are the undersides. Nice glittery under there. Do the funkiest pose ever. Okay, client, show me your nails. Client, what are you doing?
This is my nail pose.
That's not no nail pose I've ever seen.
It shows off every angle. Top, side, back.
Wow, and here are all the nails together. Both hands. Tell me they don't look like two different people. Two different hands right here. These are two different vibes, but then again, they're so cute together. Super colorful, flowery spring, super blingy, and extra long with crescent cut shape.
This is Sister Spice, and this is Sister Spicy.
Whoa. For the record, sanity check is at a good 2 out of 10. But that's all because these nails turn out so good, so, you know, I'm fine. You know, because this client, she's a really demanding client, so, you know, sometimes I go off the rails. I go flying off the rails. But I didn't this time. But that is pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the creepy Reddit stories and the 2-part nail set. But that's pretty much all. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!